All you, Gloria.
The meeting comes to order for transportation disadvantage. Order. Are there any persons that want to speak for 3 minutes?
For public comment.
Any public comment? Are there any?
Doesn't look like it.
I don't think so.
Anyone online?
It would have to be online, they're not gonna let the public in.
You can go on to the next one, Gloria.
Okay, approval of the minutes. We have two minutes. We should do those separately.
I still move to approve the June 25th.
Father, second.
I second.
Thank you.
Just do it now. All in favor?
All in favor to approve the minutes, the June minutes, signify by aye.
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 Noes? No. And we have the April 22nd minutes. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion for April minutes to be approved.
Okay, Craig, thank you. Okay.
Who was the second? Thank you, Gloria.
Okay, so all in favor for approving the April minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? There you go. April minutes are approved. Thank you. I'm a little slow today. Are we ready to the items? The first A item is Joshua.
Yeah, thank you, Gloria. So this was an item that came up at our last board meeting, the board meeting before that, on forming a subcommittee to explore the transportation tax, both the impacts of the overturned tax on the TD population, but also looking towards a board resolution perhaps to support a new tax. So this is something you all were interested in forming. I'm happy to take volunteers for that. I guess first thing we should, if you all are interested in forming a subcommittee, I guess we would need a motion to form that in a second and then up down to start.
I move to form a sub.
Thank you, Glenn. Second.
Okay, still second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
And then I'm happy to take any volunteers who would like to participate. I'm hoping maybe 2 or 3 one-hour meetings, and we can start kind of fleshing out what we want to say and how to move forward. And then we'll bring it before the board after that.
Volunteer.
But
Josh, I don't know if I would be able to, because of my position with the Department of Transportation.
Right. Look, so
I'm not sure. I have to check the rules on that.
conflict of interest. Can explore that. Anyone else? Gloria? You interested in participating?
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
For the transportation tax subcommittee to explore that. I think you had been interested in the last meeting.
I'm not against.
Okay. Sounds good. Is there anyone online that would like to participate in that? Anyone else?
I can say people maybe, I'm less than my right now.
Okay. All right, and I know Artie had expressed interest as well, and so I'll be sure to include him as well. Glenn, Tracy, if you're able to participate, and Gloria. We'll have to stick with that.
Okay. We go to B, transportation, safety, and Mr. Long.
Yes, thank you all. Good morning. Can someone give me the ability to share my screen? All right, thank you. Johnny Wong, TPO staff, and this morning I'm here to present to you the 2021 Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan Performance Targets. I apologize because I know that that's a mouthful. We can abbreviate that as PTASK moving forward. So I want to provide a little bit of context for any new members to the coordinating board. Transit safety is one of several performance measures that the TPO is required to track. Among several others, all of the measures originate from MAP 21 legislation, and that legislation also requires us to set targets for these measures so that we can plan projects in the hopes of achieving those targets at a future time. The PTASK measures that I'm going to present to you this morning are the latest to be released. And the rule accompanying these measures states that we must track and set targets for the 7 measures that are shown on this slide. I'll read them off to you. The first measure is total number of fatalities. The second is the rate of fatalities per 100,000 vehicle revenue miles, which is abbreviated as VRM. The third is total number of injuries. The fourth is the rate of injuries per VRM. The total number of safety events, the rate of safety events per VRM, and then finally, system reliability. System reliability means the average distance between major mechanical failures. So that represents how many miles a bus or the streetcar travels in between major failures that disrupt service. To give you a sense of what kind of events may constitute one of these safety concerns, fatalities are defined as any incident which results in a death, and those things may include bus collisions, suicides, workplace accidents, like if someone is killed in the mechanic shop or something to that effect, and finally acts of God, which are deaths that are attributable to natural disasters. Injuries are counted if they require the person to be transported to a medical facility and if they occurred aboard a transit vehicle or within a facility or station. Safety events can include things like collisions, fires, derailments, or evacuations. And then finally, system reliability is defined by the distance traveled by a vehicle before a vehicle failure, a power disruption, a signal failure, or otherwise just any system failure that causes the vehicle to stop operating. In addition to the TPOs being required to report performance and set targets, transit agencies like T-BARTA and HART are also required to do the same, as is the state DOT. Small transit agencies like the Sunshine Line were granted a delay, so they're not required to produce a public transportation safety plan until a forthcoming date. Once that safety plan is adopted, however, they will have to set safety targets, and then the TPO will have to take those into consideration when we set our targets for the following year. Excuse me. The PTASK rule was published in July of 2018. So you may realize that it's been quite a while since the rule was published until today, but there have been a number of delays and setbacks, mostly due to COVID. There was also a slow rollout of these targets because not all of the transit agencies were initially required to set these safety plans. The focus by the Federal Transit Administration was for the 12 largest transit agencies nationwide to create a safety plan, and then large transit providers to follow, and then small transit providers to follow after that. So there's been quite a delay from the time that it was published until today. We were recently informed that the state has not yet adopted its PTASK targets. So we are predicting that it will establish those sometime later this year. And we were also recently informed that the final deadline for the TPO to set targets and to transmit them to DOT is September 30th, which is obviously very late in the year. We're setting these targets for the calendar year of 2021, and we're already more than halfway through the year. But in future years, we will probably not be setting targets in this way. I would anticipate that in 2022, the transit agencies will set their targets probably very early in the year, spring, and then we will follow. We have up to 180 days after the transit agencies set their targets for us to set and adopt ours. And so from that date forward, as in like from the date that we set our targets, every time that we adopt or amend our transportation improvement program or our long-range transportation plan, those new targets will have to appear in those documents. The purpose of tracking these measures and establishing targets is threefold, at least as I see it. The first reason why we're establishing these targets is because the target setting process itself requires the state DOT, the transit providers, and the TPO to work together to review the performance data and collaboratively propose targets for the board to adopt. This coordination process ensures that we're all on the same page about what might be needed to improve performance related to these 7 measures. Secondly, reviewing the data annually means that we'll be more aware. We'll be able to see if our safety investments are moving the needle. So as we continue to invest money in projects to improve transit safety, by reviewing the data annually, we'll be able to see whether or not we're making a difference and to what extent we're having an impact. And lastly, the TPO will begin integrating these transit safety goals into our planning processes once they're adopted. And so we're working on developing a methodology to ensure that the projects that we prioritize for funding will explicitly take transit safety into account. So from here on out through the rest of the presentation, I'm going to show you the current year's performance and the proposed targets by mode. These are broken down into 4 modes, the first of which is the TICO streetcar. And so the current performance is that the streetcar has 0 fatalities, and the target for calendar year 2021 is to have 0 fatalities. The fatality rate, of course, is 0, and so the target is again 0. There are 3 injuries on average per 100,000 VRM, and the target is actually anticipating for that number to increase to 3.45, given the investments and the condition of the streetcar. I'll caveat these targets with these were prepared by a consultant that was responsible for producing the safety plan. These may not be the same moving forward. The current injury rate is 2.61 injuries per 100,000 VRM, and the target is for that number to be 3. There were 42 safety events in the current period, and the target for calendar year 2021 is 48.23. The safety events rate per VRM is 36.5, and the target is for that to increase to 42. And in the current period, there have been 857 miles of travel in between major mechanical failures, and the target is for that number to increase to 900. That number increasing represents an improvement because remember, 857 is the miles traveled in between breakdowns. So for that number to increase means that reliability is getting better. The second mode is fixed route. These are routes that are fixed in place. The current fatalities performance is 0 and the target is 0. Same thing with the fatality rate, 0 and 0. 62 injuries in the current period. The target for all of 2021 is 79.49. The injury rate per vehicle revenue miles is 0.77, and the target is for that to increase to 1. 477 safety events in the current period, and the target is for that to increase to 556. The rate of safety events occurring is 6 per 100,000 VRM, and that number is anticipated to increase to 7. And system reliability is anticipated to increase from a current of 18,616 miles, moving up to 19,547. HeartFlex and HeartPlus buses, fatalities are 0. The target is 0. Same with the fatality rate. Injuries in the current period are 82, and that number is anticipated to increase to 103. Injury rate per VRM is 3.98. That's anticipated to go up to 5. There have been 116 safety events, and that's expected to go up to 123.6. The rate of safety events is 5.63, expected to go up to 6. And reliability is expected to increase from 9,763 to 10,251. And finally, the TBARTA van pool, they took a slightly different approach. They did not look at the previous year, they looked at the previous average of 5 years. So the current performance is actually from 2016 through 2020. They had 0 fatalities, the target is 0. The rate, of course, is 0 for fatalities. 0.2 injuries as a 5-year average, and the target is for that number to go down to 0. Likewise, the injury rate was 0 and the target is 0. There was 1 safety event in 5 years, or 1 safety event on average over a 5-year period. The target is to drop that to 0. The safety event rate was 0.04 and the target is 0. And system reliability, this is a little bit confusing because I'm not sure that the consultant who prepared this report understood what this meant. The current performance is 0 miles in between system reliability according to TBARTA. I think what they mean is that there are no major mechanical failures and the target would thus be infinity. However, we took these targets from the document that was adopted by the TBARTA board, and we didn't feel that we wanted to make an adjustment without the board's support. So once we adopt these targets, we will reflect that as a 0 with an asterisk indicating that that should be changed in a future year. The next steps for what we do with this information is to report these adopted targets to FDOT. FDOT will then transmit them to the Federal Transit Administration for records. And then secondly, we are working internally to develop a performance methodology so that we can evaluate the impacts of our investments upon transit safety in future years. That way we can target investments to attack any issues that we see regarding transit safety. This is an action item, and so what we are asking or what we are recommending for this board to do is to approve the calendar year 2021 transit safety targets and make that recommendation for the TPO board to also adopt those targets. And I will be happy to answer any questions.
All right. The first number on that chart is has almost always on those things been lower. Is that because the time frame for that was shorter than an entire year? Why were they always lower than they expected? It seems like we're planning for worse.
This is a situation that the TPO encountered when we first adopted all of the other MAP 21 performance measures. We chose to establish a baseline figure that was contextualized by investments. And so Again, these numbers were prepared by a consultant, so I can't speak directly to this issue, but I will explain that when we established our targets the first time, we anticipated that performance was going to get worse over a future period because the investments had not yet been targeted specifically to improve the performance. So regarding these targets, one might understand that if the transit agencies are not specifically investing in technology or improvements to reduce injuries, like let's say they choose to allocate the majority of their funds toward increasing service or for some other purpose, then it stands to reason that injuries may increase. However, once the transit agencies start creating specific or programs specifically to fund improvements in these areas, then we would expect them to decrease. Does that make sense?
It does. One other quick one. I don't know who has what authority, but why aren't the various entities more or less required to do a very early in the year estimate so it actually reflects the reality? I mean, if you make your plan in June, it just seems silly to me. I don't know. It seems like it should be January, February. I'm not sure how.
I definitely agree. I totally understand. We had these measures on our radar a long time ago. Like I mentioned, they were published back in 2018. So we were looking forward to coordinating and having these ready for you as soon as the data was prepared, as soon as the safety plans were in. But the FTA initially delayed the rollout by a year, and then another 6 months, and then another 3 months. And we just ended up in this position where now we're being forced to adopt targets for the whole year. And really, they're not due until September 30th. By that point, the year's 75% gone. Next year, it will almost certainly not be the case. Another thing that kind of delayed the adoption is HART recently hired a new safety officer. The staff who was responsible for managing the consultant prepared safety plan has left the agency. The new safety officer is very well aware of the deadlines and the implications for getting these to us in a more timely manner. So next year we'll be way more on the ball than we have been this year. I don't expect that there will be any delays in future years.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it just seemed odd to me too. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
I do. This is Glenn Brown. To Mr. Forstell's point, I'm not sure I feel comfortable saying that just because the cost for quote unquote increasing service is a good excuse for not maintaining safety. To me, if people aren't getting places safely, what's the point of increasing service? There's none there. And to me, this feels like we're rewarding people for not investing in safety. And I'm not real cool with that. I think that's sort of the right approach. I don't like seeing cost simply be the driver of trying to get something done for the sake of getting something done. So I'm curious why, I'm still not understanding, I guess, why it feels comfortable or okay to raise that safety benchmark as opposed to try to maintain or lesser or make it less.
I can totally understand that, and I'm totally understanding if you do not want to support the motion. But I will say that in peer workshops, we have heard from many transit agencies who are saying that reporting measures and predicting future performance according to the data and current levels of performance may allow them to better allocate funds to target these specific issues. And so I don't necessarily know that we would expect performance to decrease simply because the targets are anticipated to increase. I mean, that's just the reality. Being on this board, I'm sure you're all aware that HART, they have been operating with a very small budget for a very long time. And unless something dramatic happens, they might not have the funds to improve service improve safety, improve the condition of all their assets. They're responsible for a lot. And so setting these targets doesn't mean that we're comfortable with them. We don't want these numbers to increase, but it is a reflection of the real situation that the agency is facing.
Okay. Any other questions, anybody?
Mike Lacy from AP, I have one question. Does your report in somewhere, not I know from what we saw, but in some other place, like kind of dive deeper into the causation or location for the injuries that I know fatalities were all zero, but the injuries, they all kind of had some. Does it talk about like why they happened or where they happened at all?
I would have to request that safety plan from HART and transmit it to this board if you're interested. The TPO didn't play a role in producing that, and HART's new safety manager was not involved at all in the production of that report. We're kind of working from something that is outdated already. Next year, when that plan's updated, I'm almost certain that they will look into the details a little bit more than what the existing plan has. But I can follow up with you and see if I can provide any of that information to you now.
Okay. I just also didn't know if maybe this was a report that was more supposed to be, zoomed out big picture stuff, like county-wide as opposed to, more localized problems.
Any questions, any other? If not, we need you need our approval to vote on it, correct?
Yes, please.
Someone would like to make the motion.
It's not too late. One more question. What happens if we don't vote positive on it now?
If you do not make the motion to approve the transit safety targets, that doesn't mean that this action is done. We will report that in our committee reports and transmit it to the board. The board will take that into consideration when we propose for it to adopt these targets.
So that your work will still go on, right?
We'll continue making this presentation to the other committees and collecting all the feedback we receive, and then presenting that summary of all the comments and all of the actions to the board. And then I think we're asking the board to take action on these, I think the second week of September, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to check my calendar real quick. So I think the MPO board meeting is September 14th. So between today and the 14th, we'll have an opportunity to summarize all the comments.
Okay, is someone who will volunteer to make the motion?
Maybe, I think this is Mike Lacy. Would it be possible? So I think some of the hesitation is the part where you say targets. Would it be better maybe to call that an estimation of what is going to occur as opposed to a target? Because I think the target should always be 0 injuries, 0 fatalities, infinite miles without repair. I think that's maybe some of the holdup here. So if someone disagrees, is this maybe a matter of semantics? If maybe we want to change that wording of targets to estimations?
If I could, the word target is part of the MAP 21 legislation. And so I don't know what the implications would be of changing that word from target to goal or objective. The legislation is fairly clear in the guidelines in that targets are supposed to be data-driven and realistic. And so the reason why we're presenting these to you as they've been adopted by the TBARTA board and the HART board is because, again, that is just a reflection of what the agency will be able to accomplish in this 1 year. If they do something with their investment programs and start to target investments to improve these areas of weakness, we would likely see that the targets will be decreases in future years. But for this very first period, this is the approach that we took in adopting our safety targets as well. We anticipated that they would increase because we had not yet started to target investments to attack that problem. I know I've mentioned this a couple of times, so I'm just kind of like reiterating. I totally understand if you're comfortable, but I would not recommend for the word targets to be amended as a part of your motion.
Is anyone going to volunteer to make a motion?
Sorry, John.
All right. Somebody want to table this?
One proposal is that the board support the targets with the caveat that, there's the expectation that moving forward, there will be improvements in the targets in future years, and that investments will be targeted to bring these numbers to a better place or something like that. Johnny, what do you think of that?
I think that would be totally acceptable. Josh, I think I heard you. Your voice is coming in and out a little bit for me, but I think I heard you say that you would propose for the board to approve the calendar year 2021 transit safety targets with the acknowledgement that next year's safety targets, that they would decrease from current performance. Is that correct?
There would be targeted investments to do that moving forward. Like that.
I think that would be acceptable to FDOT and FTA.
Just a thought, no pressure,
Is anyone gonna do something though? Support what Josh said?
Tracy Noyes, FDOT. I'll make a motion.
Mike Lacy, I'll second.
Okay, let's vote on it. All who will, as the motion has been made and seconded, all who will say yes, say yes if you agree. How many?
Yes.
Okay, how many say no?
No.
No.
For sale and,
Okay, I think the motion carried though. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay. This is something tough to agree with something with, you don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, we're going to go back to the public comments. Someone was waiting to speak. I hope you're still hanging on. And you have 3 minutes to speak to us. Public comment.
Leah, you're muted. But you should be unmuted on our. So Leah, if you're there, you're self-muted. Sean, yeah.
Guess she got tired of waiting.
Move on forward.
We'll go on. The last thing, action item is coordinating contract by Karen Smith.
Okay, I think I am successfully unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, okay. Good morning from Seminole Heights over here. This morning we have one coordination contract, as most of you are aware. The CTC, which is Hillsborough County, has coordination contracts with agencies that provide their own transportation for their clients. Generally, they're all agencies who have 5310 funding that they receive through DOT, which they use to purchase vehicles and sometimes for operating expenses. The Agency for Community Treatment Services, which most of you know as ACTS, because ACTS has been around for a very long time, currently has a coordination contract with the county, and it will expire before the next coordinating board meeting. So we need to enter into a new contract with them to replace that agreement. ACTS provides behavioral health services, residential, outpatient, crisis care, treatment for people in the justice system, substance abuse, mental illness, important behavioral services. They have 22 vehicles, some funded through 5310, some I think funded through other funding. And last year served over 1,600 unduplicated clients and provided 16,452 one-way trips. And that's even during COVID, which I think just points to how significant what they do is, because the COVID year, everything was less. And even at that, their cost per trip was $25.76 per trip. That's just an average cost per trip. And I think just all these presentations this last year or so, I'm pointing out that that's probably higher than normal because everyone is doing less trips and less people in the vehicle. So just as a footnote, that's probably lower than their typical. They would have been at the meeting this morning for questions, but we're not quite able to attend. But they did attend one of the last, Josh is doing social service agency surveys with, as part of the TDSP update, and ACTS was one of the agencies that participated in those, the kind of deeper dive surveys. So we did meet with them and Josh just about 2 weeks ago, I think. So we work a lot with them and they work with us, and we, they transport who they can and we transport some people for them who, if they can't cover it. So we just need approval from the board today to enter into a new coordination contract with ACTS, and then that'll go to the Board of County Commissioners next month.
Tracy, why is that DOT? I motion the service.
I just wanted to ask a question. Karen, hi, it's Glenn. A quick question.
Hi.
I just want to hear from you. Did you guys have any areas of concern with them this year? And the second part of that is, did they address them if you had them?
Yeah, absolutely not. We have not had issues with ACTS that I can think of. Right? Yeah, they're very responsive to anything and very responsible.
I've had the same success with them.
Other questions to Karen? None? Do we have a motion to approve the coordinating contract?
I think Tracy was starting one.
I make the motion. Thank you.
I'll second. Christina Mellon.
We have a motion and a second.
Okay. We have a second?
Yes.
All right. All who agree, say yay.
Yay.
Yeah.
Any noes? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, I think that's all our action items. And next is the status committee. I think that the first one is Scott Clark.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members, and staff. Scott Clark, Director of Hillsborough County Sunshine Line. And I want to start off with our update with sharing my great appreciation for all of our drivers and staff who've been in providing service and enduring this pandemic for well over a year now, and doing a fantastic job, especially the drivers who are out there on the front lines, face to face with individuals. And they have fears just like everybody else with catching COVID, but because of their deep commitment to what they do and the care that they have for the clients they serve, they continue coming to work and doing a great job serving our community. So I just wanted to share my appreciation for all their hard work. And with that, some of the staffing issues that we're having right now, we have 9 driver vacancies, and it's not because we're not recruiting and trying to hire, is that there's a driver shortage nationwide. It continues on just like other industries too. And for instance, the last 2 recruitments, we only got 2 drivers that just finished training and they're on the road. We have another recruitment current. It's just people aren't coming in. We have 6 drivers off the road, FMLA, and then we have 3 employees who are out with COVID. And if you think about it, we have 56 drivers authorized, and with all those out and the vacancies, we only have 38 drivers that would be on the road. And then sometimes people have to take off for doctor's appointments. So you're talking maybe 30 routes a day covering 1,000 square miles of Hillsborough County, day in and day out. And they're doing a phenomenal job covering it. With that, our trips are steadily increasing, well, slowly increasing to just under 6,000 a month. Our calls are just over 6,000, which they're almost back to normal. Some of the safety precautions that we have, I brief every time. All the barriers are installed in the bus, the passenger seat barriers, and we have air purifiers and hand sanitizer on all the buses. Drivers and passengers wear masks, so we have a lot of safety protocols in place. So then moving on to the Flamingo transition, the electronic fare for HART. We now have implemented the regular bus passes to Flamingo and the discounted bus passes. The only ones that are on paper would be single day passes and passes for HART Plus. Kudos to Karen and Rosa and the customer service staff for putting all that together and going through all these new processes, developing new processes and getting that implemented. And also to Emmanuel Nunez from HART. They're doing a great job getting this transition and making this transition successful. Moving on to some of our new partners, I want to thank Joshua and Sarah for reaching out, as Karen had mentioned, to the community, social service agencies, nonprofit agencies. With those meetings, we've had developed new partnerships, and some of them would be the McDonald Training Center, Tampa Crossroads, and another one that we found out through a commissioner referral is My Warrior's Place, where that's a respite site in South County, right on the water, where veterans, they can go there for a weekend, for some time away, for some time off. So we went down there and we're partnering with them to provide transportation service for those veterans who have no means of transportation to get down there and they need to get some time off, some respite. We're also doing trips for groups that go to the VA and before they go back into service. From my understanding, it would be groups coming out of the area. They go to the VA, get some services, and before they head back, they need some respite time. So we'll take those groups from the VA down to that area. Very nice place. They have trailers and different places like cabins, and they have fishing and charter. It's just a really nice place. And they also put together, it's called My Service Dogs Place. And those are for veterans who go into care, either at the VA for medical or drug treatment or something like that, or mental health, and they can't take their animals with them. Otherwise, they go to the shelter, and a lot of people don't want that, so they refuse care. So now they can go to a nice place where their animals can have that respite care along with them. And we'll provide that. They'll usually get, VA will provide one trip for them, and instead of going back home, they'll go to pick up their service animal. But then they'll be stranded down there with no way to get back home. So we'll also do that transportation for them. Also, we're working on our service plan update, working with Joshua and Sarah. We're working on updating our goals, objectives, and strategies and return on investment. A lot of good stuff, a lot of great ideas, and also working with the committee. And I think that our long duration, our 5-year plan is going to be a exciting and new plan with a new look. And now about emergency operations, we have a tropical storm Ida out there, and we're monitoring that closely right now and see where, hopefully it doesn't come our way, but if so, then we'll be prepared to do those special needs evacuations along with the Emergency Operations Center and our partners, HART and School Board Transportation. So that's pretty much it for my update. Are there any questions for me?
Questions?
Yeah, I've got one or two, unfortunately. I always have. Are you doing any serving to, I think they call it the PRRC, it's a VA mental health place up in Roosevelt Downs? Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not familiar with that, and I don't think VA has their own transportation, so they might be handling that on their own.
Yeah, that's why. And just what was the name of the veterans respite kind of place that you talked about in the middle of it?
It's called My Warriors Place.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it's by a lady named Kelly Cowell. She's the president and founder, and she lost her son in Afghanistan, and it was so devastating for her. She also wrote a book, and that this respite place is what came out of that whole thing. Is her experience mourning for her son. And it's not only for veterans, it's for the military, for veterans. So active duty goes there also. First responders, Blue, Silver, White, and Gold Star families can also go there. It's a beautiful place.
Thank you.
And they have a website, www.mywarriorsplace.org, for anyone interested.
This is Mike Lacey. I have kind of one sort of question. So you mentioned you're short-staffed. One is, do you know how many staff you are looking to hire right now?
We have 9 driver vacancies, so that's we have an advertisement out right now. So however many we can get from there, that would be good.
And then what I would just say from my
hopefully not because we have to train them also, and
right,
training
so
9 drivers at one time for our staff. So if we get 6, we'll be good on this recruitment.
From my end, as far as facilitation, is there any barrier you're encountering that you might want us to assist you with in overcoming? Like, is it that they're not having the right schooling, they're not applying? What do you think the barrier is that I might be able to help with on my end?
It's the number of, we don't have the number of applicants that we used to. I guess a lot of people may not be interested in employment or in driving. And then some of the people that apply, they don't have the year experience with transporting passengers.
Okay. Thank you much.
Any other
Oh,
questions?
you're welcome.
There's one more over here.
I did have one. What qualifications do the drivers have to have in order to apply?
They have to have a high school diploma, and they have to have a year experience transporting passengers, and they have to be able to pass all our training and the background checks. We get ACA and Area on Aging or Elder Affairs, the Department of Elder Affairs background, level 2 background checks.
So no CDL license?
No, they don't have to have a CDL, and they also have to be able to pass the DOT physical.
Thank you.
Oh, you're
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, I'll go to 5310, update, Tracy Dawes.
Thank you. Yes, I'm the District 7 5310 coordinator. The 5310 program is administered by the FTA and the Florida Department of Transportation. And its purpose is to improve mobility for seniors and individuals with disabilities. This program supports transportation services by providing capital and operating funds for local agencies serving clients. Every year, the FDOT hosts a workshop in October, and it is for updating agencies on how to apply, how the program overview, and the processes if you were to join FDOT, receive funds through FDOT. Last year, we hosted it virtually, which worked out really well because we broke up what was traditionally a one-day workshop into 4 separate workshops, to where agencies could join whatever info session they wanted to join. And it wasn't long and drawn out, so we had a lot more engagement. They could ask questions and we'd have time to answer them. So after the workshop in October, we opened up the application in Transit, which is our database for the transit section. And then we score them and submit to the central office in March the applications, and then central office approves it and it gets sent to FTA. So last year, we had a drop in applications from 39 to 28, and 12 of them were Hillsborough County. We requested $1,142,000 in capital and $745,000 in operating. So we should hear back in October the final approval and would be able to start writing grants and contracts. Out of the 12 applications, 10 were approved to be sent up to the central office. And now we're just waiting to hear what was approved and get the grants out. Any questions?
Questions? None?
I have one. Is that 12 applications from Hillsborough specifically?
Yes. There was 28 applications total, which was a drop from 39 the previous year.
And it's a statewide thing.
No, this is just in our district.
Our district.
So our district is Hillsborough, Hernando, Citrus, Pasco, and Pinellas.
Okay.
Maybe because I just combined Hillsborough and Pinellas. It's only a bridge.
Thank you. Now we're going to talk about storm evacuation. We've had a lot of storms this year. And shelters and Allison. Yeah.
Good morning. Joshua, can I share my screen? It's okay. All right, let's see if I can. Please let me know if you're seeing the website right now. Or are you seeing my notes? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, and you see the screen. Let me put this into the chat, the website we're looking at. All right, so good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Allison Yabe with the TPO staff, and just want to give you a quick briefing today on the study, the Storm Evacuation Forecast and Shelter in Place study. It's a bit of a mouthful. We're typically calling it the Hurricane Evacuation, Storm Evacuation Study. So the TPO, like many agencies for some time now, has been considering transportation resilience to any form of disruption because it's critical to our agency's policy and program making decision making. We mentioned earlier, the chair mentioned earlier that, you know, we're in full swing for hurricane season, started June 1st and will last until November 30th. Most recent experience for everyone was Tropical Storm Fred, and NOAA's predicting as of August 15 to 21 named storms, Henri being number 8. That was right after Fred, 7 to 10 hurricanes, 3 to 5 major hurricanes, and likelihood of above normal seasons about 65%. So pretty important to be prepared. Evacuation plans are in place and part of the state and county emergency operations to help people prepare and respond to disasters. We're working alongside City of Tampa and County Emergency Management, the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, to really identify and look at emergency evacuation options that might be able to happen without expensive road windings. And that's typically, you know, if there's not enough capacity, the first thought is to widen roads to increase capacity for evacuations. So there was an open house this Wednesday, and I want to, we had the open house to ask residents about their evacuation shelter experiences during a storm and what might be improved. So if you're interested, there's a PDF actually on the website I'm showing right now, and there will be a full recording of the open house on YouTube. But we wanted to get people's opinions because some of the information gathered so far from the statewide study based on anonymized cell phone data is that, no surprise, people living closer to coastal areas evacuate at higher rates, but 15 to 25% of people in evacuation zones don't evacuate at all, even with a Category 5 storm. And over 10% of people outside the evacuation zones, for instance, will leave even if there's a Category 1 storm. So the night of the open house, we also launched a survey, which I have a tab here, to help understand what motivates people to evacuate or not evacuate during storms. And this is what my reason for briefing you today is. I want to direct your attention to our project page here and let you know that there's a survey here that will just take you 5 minutes, and it's open till October 7th. It's about a 90-day period because we're going to have a second survey and open house to get people's feedback on our findings. So we really want to know this information because it will help us look at different topics to consider. Some examples of this are, you know, people without access to a vehicle, they might need to rely on public transportation to evacuate. Are there some needs for improvements and ideas for improvement? Small changes, it could be operational behavior other than widening roads, to really help relieve bottlenecks on evacuation routes. So we want to consider all those things. This website also has an interactive map. I should make this smaller so you can see the whole map. But basically you can go in here and, type in your address and you'll be able to see where you sit with respect to evacuation zones and where you sit with respect to shelters and pet shelters, and just help you kind of get a sense of where you are. We also have, there's more robust information also on the county sites, and we have links to that as well. So that is the crux of what I wanted to show you today. And I'll take any questions, but also I know you, in the interest of time, if you're out of time, please feel free to email me. My contact information is on the website, and Joshua can get to me as well. So if you would please take the survey, take a couple of minutes, and then share that with everyone. Thanks. And that's kind of all I had for this, Joshua. I can stop sharing the screen. Oh, I don't know if you can hear me though.
We hear you.
Okay, so love to get your feedback. I just can't get your screen back up. There you go. All right. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
We're ready for the next
Okay, next is, I don't have a name, Heights.
Yeah, hi, my name is Craig Fox. I'm with Florida Department of Transportation. I'll be presenting on this.
Okay.
Just give me 1 second. I can share the screen on. I don't think I have screen sharing capabilities. Could somebody grab me that? Oh, perfect. Just came through. All right, let me see if I can get the screen right. Had some issues in the past, so hopefully those will resolve this time. So let's try it out. Okay, can you see the slideshow, the clean screen, or do you see the anything else? Oh wait, let me try the audience view.
Yeah, there's a big
Okay.
graph thing up right now.
All right, perfect. All right, great. Thank you everybody for having us this morning. My name is Craig Fox. I'm a PD&E project manager with the Florida Department of Transportation District 7. I'm here today joined with Justin Willits with HART and Calvin Hardy with the City of Tampa. And we are all here to present on the Heights Mobility Study updates. So without further ado, I'll get into the presentation. So the limits of this project are along Florida Avenue and Tampa Street. Let me bring this laser pointer to make it a little bit easier to see it. So Florida Avenue to the east side, and then Tampa Street just to the west of there. And the limits extend on the southern end from Tyler Street going north to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The study purpose is to provide safe and efficient mobility to complement the character of the neighborhood, balance local and regional needs, and provide mobility options for mode users. Now, one of the, oh, sorry, my webcam screen popped up for a second. I gotta get rid of this. Sorry, I'm on one screen today, so it's a little different. All right, there we go. So the study focused on the FDOT vital few, which includes safety, mobility, and innovation. So on the safety side, one thing I want to bring everybody's attention to is that graphic in the top left corner. This shows the severe injury crash types that are most prominent along the corridors. And so you can see that the highest severe injury crash type are angle crashes at 42.3%, followed up by pedestrian crashes at 19%, then fixed objects at 15%, and rear end crash at 11.5%. And by addressing speed management concerns, the limited pedestrian crossing opportunities, and sightline issues, we're pretty confident that this project will be able to increase the safety along this corridor. From a mobility aspect of safety, from a mobility aspect of need along the corridor, there are substandard bike facilities. There's a high level of existing transit demand, which of course needs a quality pedestrian infrastructure to support. And there's also potential for future premium transit that will be supported also by pedestrian facilities and infrastructure. So now I'll turn it over to Justin Willis, and he'll describe some of the statistics with HART and their transit.
Hi, can you all hear me all right? Having some issues here.
Yes.
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 All right, great. Yeah, so I'm Justin Willis with HART. I am the Deputy Project Manager for the Arterial Bus Rapid Transit Study that we're working through phase 2 of the PD&E right now. So I just wanted to touch on the existing transit on the corridor and just talk about how the service currently works and the demand that we have that exists with the current service. As you see in the top table here, Route 1 runs at every 15 minutes during most of the weekday, which is 4 buses an hour, and carries anywhere from 45 to 86 passengers during the peak hour. Route 5 has recently dropped from 30 to 60 minutes, but was carrying 15 to 30 passengers per hour during the peak, and Route 6, another one of our more frequent routes, carries anywhere from 13 to 60 passengers per hour on the segments of Florida Avenue that you see there in green, orange, and purple on the right. And in totality, we carry up to 180 passengers per hour on those 3 routes along Florida and Tampa Street, which is a really, really good number. The corridor is generally a bit underutilized from a traffic perspective. There are 3 lanes in one direction. We are proposing in the bus rapid transit study to take one of those lanes to create a transit guideway to utilize with several routes, but primarily the bus rapid transit route traveling from downtown to the university area. Next slide. There's a lot of coordination, as most of you are probably pretty familiar with, but in downtown, we're planning to share the guideway south of Palm Avenue that is to be constructed by the City of Tampa Streetcar Extension Project. That project isn't funded for construction yet, but we're heavily coordinating with that effort and having similar characteristics of the guideway north of Palm Avenue so that it's consistent south as well. We're currently in the process of doing a transit-oriented development study to identify existing policies that are in place by local agencies to support transit and how we can improve those policies to increase density, improve walkability and accessibility to future transit stations, but also look at how we can put policies in place to enhance the existing transit. As I showed on the first slide, there's a lot of good frequent service out there already. So we think that some of those policies can support our existing services as well, help us reach towards some bigger and better services into the future. Next slide. I think I'm passing it back. Nope, one more for me. So this is just a little reminder slide, kind of a flashback to the early phases of the BRT study, where we looked at 17 different alternatives for getting from Florida Avenue to Nebraska and Fowler Avenue, and looking at multiple combinations of both. And through a pretty extensive process, we narrowed it down to 3 alternatives that scored the highest, which were crossing from Florida to Nebraska at Linebaugh, at Palm Avenue, and at Waters Avenue. The Palm Avenue was seen as very duplicative by the team and our stakeholder working group. So that was removed, and then we moved forward with Waters and Linebaugh, and Linebaugh scored slightly better than Waters. It was really close, but we stuck with Linebaugh. We didn't see a reason to change, or look at kind of anything outside of the scoring criteria, because it was kind of consistent with some of the thoughts we had about redevelopment potential north of the river, existing ridership, and once we actually had the TOD study catch up, the TOD study really confirmed that this was the best alignment. So we were happy that it was kind of vetted and verified by some other work that was going on a little bit behind the first phase of this study. So that's why we landed on Linebaugh Avenue, and I'll be around to take questions at the end for anyone that has them. And I think I'm passing it off now. Thank you.
Questions?
Well, if it's possible, can you hold questions until the end of the presentation, please? That's all right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Justin. All right. So next thing I want to cover is just some of the public engagement that has been ongoing on both the Heart Mobility Study and also the Heart Arterial BRT Study. The Heights Mobility Study. So in regards to the Heights Mobility Study, 3 workshops were held between 2017 and 2019, along with a neighborhood walk audit, presentations to neighborhood associations, local table events, and online tools were also made available. And regarding the heart arterial BRT study, 2 public workshops were held. The stakeholder advisory group meetings were also held, along with the technical advisory group meetings also. Now, from the public engagement, we'd like to highlight right now 5 of the most desired study outcomes. The number 1 was wider sidewalks. Number 2, more bike lanes or routes. Number 3, more pedestrian crossings. 4, premium transit, and 5, traffic calming. And all of those were above 60% for a desired outcome. So now we're get into some alternatives. I'm going to get into some short-term alternatives that will address some of these concerns, and then we'll get into the recommended alternative, along with some past ones that didn't quite meet the cut that address these 5 desires. So starting with the short-term improvements to address some of the desires mentioned. So we're looking at Florida Avenue and Tampa Avenue have projects coming up in fiscal year 2022, and they include everything from having new signals, which is graphics shown at the bottom of the screen, to mid-block crosswalks, which include what we call RRFBs, or rapid rectangular flashing beacons. Those are those yellow flashers that light up that allow crosswalks mid-block. So some signals along with those crosswalks are looking to come online, at least with the construction, in fiscal year 2022. On Nebraska Avenue, that's a little bit of a more involved project, so that's the reason why you have the date set out there, and 2 fiscal years after, in fiscal year 2024. But they do include improvements along Ottawa, Seaward, Janelle, Bryan, and 11th Avenue, with various improvements from crosswalks. I don't believe a signalized intersection is involved with the Nebraska Avenue project, but there's going to be significant pedestrian improvements throughout that whole corridor. That's coming in 2024. Some other short-term improvements include bike boulevards. Now, these may be a new term for some folks. Well, let me just cover what they are. A bike boulevard is basically a low-stress alternative to a heavier vehicle thoroughfare. So in this case, the alternative is a low-stress alternative to Florida and Tampa. And what they do, they provide new and improved crossings, also wayfinding and traffic calming strategic locations. So it's along Ola Avenue, which runs parallel to Tampa Street, and then Central Avenue, which is to the east, that runs parallel to Florida Avenue. And we're also going to take note at some of the major intersections there. So your MLK Boulevard intersection to provide some safety improvements along there too. So in Ola Ave, those limits are from Palm Ave to the south to Broad Street to the north. Design is set to begin in fiscal year 2021, with construction beginning in fiscal year 2023. Along Central Avenue, project limits are from north of Scott Street to Broad Street, and design is set to begin in fiscal year 22, with construction set to begin in fiscal year 2024. Now I'd like to cover some of the alternatives for Florida and Tampa that didn't quite make the cut, and just explain a little bit why. So I'll start with the first one being the non-motorized alternative. While this alternative included was wide sidewalks, along with a protected bike facility along Tampa Street. Now, the reason why this was rejected was that because one, you have, wide sidewalks and an exclusive bike lane is definitely a desired item, but there is very limited right of way within these corridors. And if we were to move forward with this option, one of the main things that would lose is that it would not be compatible with premium transit. Because if you notice, you reduce these lanes down to 2 lanes, then suddenly transit is just have to take up just a single lane, or to be mixed traffic, which isn't really ideal for the roadway to go from 3 lanes all the way down to single lane in each direction. The second alternative that didn't quite make the cut was a 2-way alternative, but along both Florida Avenue and Tampa Street. And what that involved was converting these one-way pairs to two-way roads with its 2-way left turn lane in the middle for both roadways. Now, these options are also not compatible with premium transit because, as you can see, in this example, there'd be only leaves just 1 lane in each direction, and that means that premium transit just wouldn't be able to run in a corridor. This also had the most significant impacts to automobile level of service and existing transit travel time. So you end up having kind of like the worst level of service for motorists, and also the worst transit travel times along the corridor. So that's why the two-way alternative didn't make the cut either. So now I'll move on to the preferred local, the preferred long-term alternative. First covering the general concept. So the typical is shown on the screen of Tampa Street. So you can see the general purpose lanes. One of the general purpose lane will be converted to an exclusive transit lane. Would also provide wide sidewalks on Florida Avenue and a shared youth pass on Tampa Street. There'll be additional pedestrian crossings and intersection safety improvements throughout the project corridor. Now I'm going to focus on the bicycle and pedestrian benefits. Of course, the wider sidewalks offer a much more comfortable and safe route for cyclists and pedestrians. There's also going to be improved pedestrian crossings along the corridor, in addition to the ones that we have in the short-term improvements that are presented earlier. There's also going to be intersection safety improvements in center lines intersections, and since we're taking away a lane from general purpose traffic, that also naturally provides more of a separation from a pedestrian to the main travel lanes. Because of course you have a bus running on this lane, but the buses come less frequently than a vehicle crosses by. And also the wider sidewalks will do a pretty good job of increasing the distance from the travel lanes to the pedestrians. And also lowering the lane count along these corridors would also lower the speeds along there and increase access to transit and make that safer also. So benefits to motorists in regards to lane repurposing includes traffic calming benefits. And that's achieved by providing, now it's kind of hard to see in this graphic, but if you look in this buffer, there's a little bit of a 3-foot buffer here. There's a little protrusion for a concrete separator. And what we noticed in traffic design is that a lot of times if you don't have some kind of physical boundary, whether that's a bus lane, a concrete separator, or trees, or buildings close to the roadway, that you notice that even just changing a speed limit sign doesn't really result in actual lower speeds, because people more so drive how they feel than how it's necessarily posted. So by changing the real physical characteristics of the roadway, that goes a long way to reducing the speeds along the corridor. Also having more signals and pedestrian crossings goes a long way to increasing traffic calming benefits too, because motorists are more aware that it's a pedestrian friendly corridor, and the signals help to break up kind of the main flow so that high speeds aren't necessarily reached along these roadways. And lastly, I'll discuss the transit benefits. So this long-term alternative will provide an exclusive transit lane, which improves overall grading for HART projects in the future. And it also provides a space for enhanced stops. So with the wider sidewalks, you can do more involved bus rapid transit stops. It's also consistent with future HART, BRT, and streetcar extension plans. So now I want to talk about the impacts to the level of service along the corridor. First, starting with the no-build intersection level of service in the design year, which is 2045. So as you can see on this diagram, so we're going to look at northbound on Florida Avenue first. So we have the level of service called out at certain intersections, with A being the highest level of service, the least amount of congestion, and F being the worst level of service. So you can see along the corridor in the design year, a couple intersections are failing just because, congestion increases over time as population continues to grow. So you have Scott Street, Palm, and MLK are failing in level of service in 2045 in the design year. We look at southbound at Tampa Street, it's a little better outlook, with the worst one being Scott Street with a level of service of D. The rest of them being between C and B. Now I'm going to change the next slide. That next slide is going to show the build alternative. So this one you're looking at right now is a no build. So assuming we do nothing and the roadway remains as is, this is what the projected level of service is in 2045. So now changing over to the build alternative. So you notice that there's not a huge amount of change along the corridor. There's of course some degradation because you are reducing the lanes, is going to impact level of service. But as you look in the northbound direction on Florida Avenue, the same intersections still remain at level of service F. So you have Scott, Palm, and MLK remain at F. and then Tyler, Henderson, Florida, Nebraska, and Lake still remain at acceptable level of services C or B. The southbound direction, you notice that so Scott still is a level of service D. That was D in the previous no build option, and there are a couple more Ds when they were previously level of service Cs. So it's not a completely failing condition. So one thing to note out of this is that yes, you can take away a lane, and it doesn't completely ruin the corridor level of service. So that's some good news as far as moving forward with this project, is that you'll be able to still have decent level of service for motorists, while also providing the enhanced transit and pedestrian facilities. Another item that this project will address is that we're exploring ways to address the drainage issues along the corridor. And we have these images shown below which show flooding that occurs periodically on Florida and Tampa roadways. And one thing I want to note also in this image is that you see that watermark along that building. And you can imagine if you're a pedestrian walking along this corridor and a car hit that puddle, you soaked. And not only that, it also, because you get a high level of flooding on there, the roadways are so old that some areas just don't have any inlets whatsoever. So looking to install a new trunk line if we have funding available, that'll go a long way. So trunk line to carry the additional volume of stormwater that's out there existing today, and also with new inlets in areas that there are no inlets currently, to improve overall drainage along there. So to reduce the amount of flooding that occurs in the buildings, and also make it safer for pedestrians out there and safe for motorists as they don't have to deal with flooding conditions. And it's a good setup for having the transit run through there too, because the transit vehicles won't have to deal with that flooding as they travel on the outside lanes. So now, so I mentioned the funding, if we could get the funding to do all these improvements. Right now we have funding in fiscal years 2025 and 26. And unfortunately, they currently don't include funding for the drainage improvements. But we are working right now with the U.S. Department of Transportation on their RAISE grant. And with that RAISE grant, which stands for Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. So we submitted for this RAISE grant, and we should find out in October of this year. And if we do get that grant, we'll be able to not only get additional funding that'll cover the drainage improvements, but also be able to advance the project to fiscal year 2023. So we're very excited about this. We are pretty confident about our application, and we're definitely hoping that we score pretty high and we're able to gain this grant, advance the project, and include the drainage improvements to improve overall safety. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Cal Hardy. He's with the City of Tampa. This is going to discuss the pilot project that the city is working on along these corridors.
Let's see, am I on? Y'all can see me?
Yep.
And hear me? Okay, good. So we have a pilot project also in the works right now. We started designing this a few years back. But the project limits are Tampa Street from Twig Street to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and Florida Avenue from Kennedy Boulevard to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. We developed this in-house with the City of Tampa Mobility Department. Our scope included repurposing general use travel lanes into dedicated bus lanes. With this project, we were looking to kind of advance this, so we weren't looking at doing any proposing any resurfacing, but we were trying to physically separate the bus lane with delineator posts, and also to emphasize it by adding some grid color pavement for transit. Next slide. So I took a couple of snippets out of the plan set just to kind of show you what each roadway, and this is kind of representative of the entirety of Tampa Street, but just kind of wanted to go through this area in particular to show some of the features. So with the BRT pilot, we're looking at accommodating the existing buses. So we're trying to, and how they're right side boarding buses now. And we have, so on this one, we're actually looking at taking that to right side lane so that they can maintain that operation. The bus lane in this area, right towards the left there at the very end, that's where the on-ramp at K Street is. So we need to maintain vehicular access to that and that right turn lane. So that candy cane striping there, that's kind of a shared use lane that at that point, traffic would actually come into the bus lane and then it would be the bus will travel with people who are trying to turn right. In the middle there, you can kind of see what the dedicated bus lane would look like like for an entirety of the lane. So it's kind of hard to see, but do you see those yellow posts there? Those are the delineator posts that would be along the bus there. And anytime you see that candy cane stripe, and that's just where there's where it's mixed with general traffic. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is another example on Florida Avenue. And this one I wanted to show because this one's a little strange here, but we're still utilizing the right side running. In this area, there is a hotel that has a lot of parking, and that's the La Meridian Hotel between Twiggs and Zach. So as part of this, and we didn't want to remove all the parking, so what we're looking at was actually adding parking to the other side of the road, where there currently are a couple of left turn lanes that are very not really utilized that much. So we would continue having the bus lane on the right side, and then switch the parking to the left side there. And then in this area, we don't have separate bike facilities. We don't have the width to provide separate bike facilities. So in this area, we actually be looking at doing a shared bus bike lane. And then I just pointed out at the very end, there's an area where the auxiliary lane, which is the right turn lane, actually shares the corridor with the bus. Okay, next slide. Okay, so on this one was what we were planning on having a public workshop at Tampa River Center at Julian B. Lane Park on Tuesday, the 21st. I believe the date and everything is still the same, but I believe we are going virtual on this one, considering the newest spike in COVID cases. So I'll have to confirm that. Maybe if I know we're going virtual. I don't know if I would assume it's the same date, but if anybody, if my colleagues here can confirm that. I can't remember I'm trying to remember from memory, but
I believe it's 6 o'clock.
What's that?
Oh,
I think it's 6 o'clock now, but it is virtual.
Yeah, okay, virtual. All right, next slide. I think this is yours, Craig.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Cal. So the next stops, like you mentioned, the public workshop that's going to be online. Sorry about not updating that slide. So please don't come out to that location on the date. It's going to be all virtual. The lane repurposing process, the city is engaging with FDOT with that. Let's look into, they're looking to submit their package this fall, 2021. The federal raise grant announcement is going to occur this fall, winter. Hopefully, we're hopefully assuming in October is when we're going to find out. So, cross our fingers with that. And also, there's going to be continued coordination with Heart BRT study on the corridor going north of MLK. So now I'd like to open the floor to any questions. We have our contact information here. Again, my name is Craig Fox with FDOT, and other presenters you heard today was Justin Willits with Heart and Cal Hardy with the City of Tampa. And thank you, everybody, for having us here this morning.
Questions? This is Glenn Brown. And it looks, thank you, by the way, for, it looks like you took in the community feedback and modeled it or something. So really appreciate your working with the local community on trying to brainstorm this and come through on it. It's really admirable. And it's very thoughtful stuff. We are the transportation disadvantaged group. So one of my thoughts as I was watching, I like the fact that you're separating lanes and things like that. That's pretty cool. But the one thought I had is, gosh, that could make a crosswalk kind of uneven for someone that can't see or is in a wheelchair or something like that. Is that being considered as you're setting these things up?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you that well. So did you say? Yeah, I'm sorry.
My question was about your crosswalks being for like vision impaired or mobility impaired, given that you're talking about putting some stuff in the lanes to separate, just making sure that you're considerate of making sure people can't trip on things or make it hard to get over bumps as they're trying to get across, and even timing the lights so that a family with small children can get across those wide intersections in a way that everybody feels comfortable and safe.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, great question. And yeah, the answer is yes. So those concrete separators, those are going to be not at the locations where there is a pedestrian crosswalk. Where there is a pedestrian crosswalk, there's going to be a gap between there. So pedestrian won't have to like step over that concrete separator in order to reach the other side of the roadway. Additionally, as far as the signal timing goes, signals, the cross time is programmed into those signals, and you can always do more options like have like an auditory, not auditory, that's a it's made up that word, but like an audible pedestrian button, so that when they hit the button, it get an audible warning to visually impaired folks so that they know when the crossing is. So those details can kind of be worked out. They're not really set in stone right yet, right now, as far as whether that'll be included or not. But those are some of the enhancements that could be made to increase accessibility.
Yeah, I like to add a few things to that. So with the concrete medians that would be at the crosswalks, generally the transit lane is purely for transit use. So for the most part, you don't really have any traffic in that lane. So with what's proposed with the RAISE grant, with the final selection or the final project, or with the streetcar, a pedestrian would cross over into the area where that buffer is, where that 3-foot buffer is. So really, that 11-foot bus lane is a vehicular lane, but the traffic is so seldom that it's a lot easier. So once they get to that point, they can actually stage, and the only place where they're really crossing like fast moving traffic is those 2 lanes. So now you don't have to cross over 3 lanes of traffic anymore. Now you're crossing over those 2 lanes of traffic that are right there. So by significantly reducing the travel distance across vehicular lanes and the lanes that actually travel faster than they should, that's a big help to pedestrians there as well. So that's another thing, just point to bring out. You kind of have a break there that you're not crossing the entire thing at once. You're crossing it in almost like 2 stages.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions?
Yeah, I have 2 questions about related to bicycles. Is the very wide sidewalk, is that redesignated into like a little bike lane and then pedestrian lane, so they aren't having to weave bicycles in and out of people, or how's that figured out?
So the question whether where we're redesignating the bike lanes. So okay, so the question is, are we redesignating the bike lanes in this area? Yes. Now, since it is arterial road, of course cyclists are allowed to ride in the travel lanes if they so desire. But yes, yes, we'll also have the shared use path along Tampa Street, 12-foot shared use path where cyclists can also travel instead of in the travel lanes.
But I'm asking, is it like a little suggested to designated bicycles here and pedestrians over here on that 12-foot sidewalk?
Oh, yeah, we're just not that far in design yet. Whether like how we're gonna divvy it up or just have it just open up. Unless Cowdy, do you want to say something?
Yeah, there's just a few things. So with the bike lanes, the idea is that there's also projects programmed on Ola and Central. And those projects are bike boulevards that will carry bike traffic down, have an alternative route, parallel route. But you can still ride on the sidewalk here on the multi-use trail. You can still ride in the lane here. The issue, a lot of times, in the city, our right-of-way widths are very narrow compared to other cities. So when we get to these streets like this, a lot of times it's not really, it's kind of prioritizing a use rather than accommodating all, because we don't have the right-of-way widths to accommodate all uses perfectly. Okay, so and when we look at a transit route like this, and a significant transit route, the use that you primarily want to accommodate on a transit route that's going to be enhanced is pedestrian use. So although the cyclists have options here, we're trying to provide as many options as they can, but we're going to, on this road, you really want to try to prioritize pedestrian travel more than cyclist travel, because the idea is to get people into to enhance the transit use. You want to have that kind of mixed use kind of thing. So I hope that answers a part of your question too. It's really just about trying to add different alternatives to go down there for a cyclist.
Right, it's also the idea of those parallel roads being used for encourage bicyclists to use the parallel roads instead of the crazy transit roads.
I'm sorry, y'all. It's really hard to hear you. There's 2 projects programmed here to provide a bike boulevard on Ola and then a bike boulevard along Central Avenue as well. I'm not sure if that was the question.
Yeah, that was. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Any other questions?
Doesn't look like it.
I think we're good.
I think we're good. I guess I was just asked, Gloria had to step out, so I was just asked to wrap things up. So are there any other concerns before we wrap things up? All that in order then. Thank you very much.
I have a real quick thing. We had a couple people that were in the queue in the beginning to speak at the public meeting, and they were unable to do so. So I believe they're going to submit a letter instead and possibly attend or call in the next meeting.
Oh, that's awesome.
Good.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other issues? All right, all that being said, I hope everyone stays safe, and thank you very much for coming, and let's have a great afternoon, and let's keep moving forward. We'll start. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.